Rain poured down in the middle of the day on Brooklyn Highway. A gleaming white Bentley died in the middle of a flooded lane, warning lights flashing frantically. A young woman in a business dress stood shivering, her phone completely dead. An old pickup truck rushed forward, braking hard and sliding on the wet road. A thin man in a worn, soaked jacket jumped out. He bent over the smoking engine bay, his calloused hands turning valves and tightening bolts. The engine roared back to life. The woman stammered, "I don't have any cash." Daniel smiled. "Just a sandwich is fine." The next day, the luxury car returned. But this time, she didn't bring a sandwich. She brought a truth that would change Daniel's life forever. In the middle of the afternoon downpour, traffic on Brooklyn Highway swerved around a stalled white Bentley, blocking one lane. Cassandra Blair, 29 years old with long brown hair matted by rain and her business dress soaked through, stood helplessly watching the warning lights blink. An old pickup truck braked hard right behind her, tires sliding on the flooded pavement. Daniel Cole, 36 years old, a single father with a lean, weathered frame and a gray jacket darkened by rain, stepped out without hesitation. He popped the hood. White smoke billowed out. He listened to the engine's stuttering breath, smelled the acrid burning scent, and his calloused hands went to work, turning valves, tightening bolts with practiced precision. The Bentley's engine growled back to life, purring smoothly once again. Cassandra stared in amazement, her voice slightly trembling. "I don't have any cash on me." Daniel chuckled softly. "Just a sandwich is fine." He accepted the chicken sandwich she offered from her back seat, nodded once, and climbed back into his truck. She stood frozen in the rain, watching the taillights of his pickup disappear into the distance, an unfamiliar feeling washing over her heart. Later that evening, in his cramped ground floor apartment, Daniel unwrapped half the sandwich and opened FaceTime to call Emily, his 8-year-old daughter with curly blonde hair, who was staying at her grandmother's house. "Did Daddy eat?" she asked with concern. He held up the sandwich. "A deal's a deal, sweetheart." Above them, several paper cranes that father and daughter had folded together hung from the ceiling, casting gentle shadows in the dim light. The apartment was small and worn, but filled with love. Daniel looked at Emily's bright face on the screen and smiled. Tomorrow, he'd pick her up and take her to school just like every morning. It was their routine, their constant in a world that had taken so much from them already. He took a bite of the sandwich, tasting not just chicken and bread, but something else. Kindness from a stranger, a moment of human connection in the middle of chaos. He had no idea that this simple exchange would set in motion events that would transform both their lives. As he prepared for bed, Daniel glanced at the paper cranes swaying gently in the apartment's draft. Emily had insisted they make them together, saying they represented hope. "Hope for what?" he had asked. "Hope for good things, Daddy," she had replied with the wisdom only children possess. Tonight, for the first time in months, Daniel allowed himself to feel that maybe, just maybe, good things were still possible. The next morning, Cassandra drove her Bentley through the narrow streets of the working-class neighborhood where she had spotted Daniel's pickup truck parked the night before. She found him walking Emily to the local elementary school, the little girl clutching a small paper crane in her hand. Cassandra rolled down her window. "I brought you a sandwich, like I promised." Emily looked up with bright blue eyes that sparkled with curiosity. "But Daddy already had breakfast." Her voice carried the innocent honesty that only children possess. After Daniel walked Emily to her classroom, making sure she was settled with her teacher and her paper crane safely tucked into her backpack, he returned to find Cassandra waiting by her car. She invited him for coffee at a small diner on the corner of the street. The diner was the kind of place that had seen better decades. Wooden tables scarred by years of use, chipped ceramic coffee cups, and the comforting aroma of toasted bread filling the air. They sat across from each other in a cracked vinyl booth. Two people from completely different worlds brought together by chance and rain. Cassandra found herself opening up in ways she hadn't in years. She told Daniel about her job in the financial sector, where everything was measured in profit margins and quarterly reports, where human connection had become a luxury she couldn't afford. "I'm exhausted by the coldness of it all," she admitted, stirring her cappuccino absently. "Every day I wake up feeling like I'm drowning in numbers and deadlines." Daniel listened intently, his rough hands wrapped around his coffee mug. When she finished, he shared his own story with quiet honesty. He had been a mechanical engineer, working for a manufacturing company that had been his second home for over a decade. But when the plant closed down during the economic downturn, he lost everything: his career, his sense of purpose, and shortly after, his wife to a sudden illness that drained their savings and left him alone with Emily. "Now I take whatever repair work I can find," he said, his voice steady despite the pain behind his words. "Small contracts, odd jobs. It's not what I planned, but it keeps Emily and me going." He paused, looking out the window toward the school. "She's everything to me now. Every decision I make is for her." Cassandra noticed a corner of a red shop rag peeking out from Daniel's jacket pocket, stained with oil and wear, a symbol of honest work done with capable hands. Something warm stirred in her chest, a feeling she had almost forgotten existed. Their conversation was interrupted when Emily burst through the diner door. Having walked the few blocks from school during her lunch break, something the small neighborhood school allowed for children whose families lived nearby. She approached their table shyly, then pulled a golden paper crane from her pocket. "This is for you," Emily said to Cassandra, placing the delicate creation on the table between them. "Daddy says cranes are for hope, and you look like you need some hope." Cassandra picked up the crane carefully, its paper smooth from Emily's small fingers. She felt tears prick at her eyes. When was the last time someone had given her something made with such pure intention? "Thank you, Emily. It's beautiful." Emily beamed with pride. "Daddy taught me how to fold them. We make them together every Sunday after church. He says that every crane carries a wish, and if you make enough of them, the wishes come true." As Cassandra held the paper crane, she realized she was experiencing something she hadn't felt in years: a sense of peace, of belonging, of being seen not for what she owned or earned, but simply for who she was. Daniel and Emily had given her something invaluable without expecting anything in return. "What do you wish for?" Cassandra asked Emily gently. Emily looked at her father, then back at Cassandra. "I wish for Daddy to be happy again. He tries to hide it, but sometimes I hear him crying at night when he thinks I'm asleep. I wish someone would see how good he is with fixing things. Not just cars, but everything." Daniel's face flushed with embarrassment and love for his daughter. "Emily, you don't need to." "It's okay, Daddy," Emily interrupted with the wisdom of a child who has seen too much too soon. "Sometimes grown-ups need help asking for what they need." Cassandra looked from Emily to Daniel, seeing clearly for the first time the depth of love between them, the sacrifices Daniel made daily, and the strength it took to rebuild a life from scratch. She also saw opportunity, not just to help, but to be part of something real and meaningful. The afternoon sun streamed through the diner's windows, casting a warm glow over their table. For the first time in years, Cassandra wasn't thinking about stock prices or board meetings. She was thinking about paper cranes and hope, about a man who fixed cars with gentle hands and a little girl who saw the world with clear, loving eyes. As they prepared to leave, Cassandra carefully tucked Emily's crane into her purse. "I'll keep this safe," she promised. "Good," Emily said with satisfaction. "Now your wishes can start coming true too." That afternoon, Cassandra made an impulsive decision that would surprise everyone, including herself. She drove to the auto repair shop where Daniel had mentioned he picked up contract work, a small, cluttered garage that specialized in everything from oil changes to complex engine rebuilds. When she arrived, she found herself in the middle of a tense situation. A group of corporate managers from her own company's automotive division had brought in an experimental electric vehicle prototype that was experiencing critical system failures. The car represented millions of dollars in research and development, and the project timeline was already behind schedule. The lead engineer, a man in an expensive suit who clearly had never gotten his hands dirty, was pacing frantically as error codes flashed across multiple diagnostic screens. "The battery management system is failing," he announced to his team. "If we can't fix this, we'll have to scrap the entire project." The garage's regular mechanics stood back, intimidated by both the advanced technology and the corporate pressure. The prototype sat silent and dead, its sleek design mocking the team of experts who couldn't bring it to life. The manager noticed Daniel working on a regular car nearby and scoffed. "Make sure the local help doesn't interfere," he said dismissively to his team. "The last thing we need is some backyard mechanic making things worse." Cassandra felt anger rise in her chest. She stepped forward, her voice carrying the authority she had earned in countless boardroom battles. "Let him try." All eyes turned to her, and several people recognized her as a senior executive from the parent company. The manager's attitude shifted immediately to uncomfortable deference, but his skepticism remained. "With respect, Miss Blair, this is highly specialized equipment. It requires advanced diagnostics and it requires someone who listens to what the machine is telling them," Cassandra interrupted firmly. She looked at Daniel, who had been watching the situation unfold with quiet attention. "What do you think?" Daniel approached the prototype cautiously, removing his wet jacket and wiping his hands with the familiar red shop rag. The corporate team watched nervously as he opened the hood and began his assessment, not with expensive diagnostic equipment, but with the same methodical approach he had used on her Bentley. He listened to the subtle sounds of the cooling fans, inhaled to detect any unusual odors from overheated components, and carefully touched various connections to feel for loose wiring or excessive heat. His movements were deliberate and respectful, treating the advanced vehicle with the same care he would give any machine. After several minutes of quiet investigation, Daniel located a loose connection in the battery management system that the sophisticated diagnostic equipment had missed. He made a few careful adjustments, reset the system's software using the car's built-in recovery mode, and stepped back. The prototype's dashboard lit up in a cascade of green lights, and the electric motor hummed to life with smooth, quiet power. The entire garage fell silent except for the gentle whir of the vehicle's systems coming online. Cassandra looked directly at the stunned corporate manager, then turned to Daniel. "You asked for a sandwich yesterday, but what if I offered you an opportunity instead?" Daniel paused, his hand still holding the shop rag, and remembered the promise he had made to his late wife. "If a real chance comes along, don't let fear hold you back." He looked at Cassandra, seeing not just a wealthy stranger, but someone who had recognized his worth when others saw only his worn clothes and calloused hands. The manager immediately objected, his professional insecurity masked as corporate concern. "He doesn't have the right credentials, no formal research experience. Bringing him into our development program could expose the company to liability issues." Cassandra's response was swift and decisive. "I don't need credentials on paper. I need results in reality, and results speak louder than any degree." She turned back to Daniel, her offer genuine and clear. "We need someone who understands machines intuitively, who can solve problems that computer diagnostics miss. I'm offering you a position as our senior troubleshooting specialist. Good salary, flexible hours, and full benefits for you and Emily." Daniel considered the offer carefully. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about Emily's future, her education, her opportunities. But he also had responsibilities he couldn't abandon. "I'll accept on one condition," he said finally. "I still need to take Emily to school every morning. That's non-negotiable." Cassandra smiled, remembering Emily's bright face and paper crane. "Deal." The handshake they shared was firm and honest, sealing an agreement that went beyond employment contracts. It was a mutual recognition of worth, a bridge between two very different worlds, and the beginning of something neither of them had expected to find. As the corporate team prepared to leave with their now-functioning prototype, several of them approached Daniel with newfound respect, asking questions about his diagnostic process and expressing interest in learning from his methods. The manager who had dismissed him earlier now seemed eager to schedule follow-up consultations. But Daniel's attention was focused on Cassandra, who was watching him with an expression he hadn't seen directed at him in years. Genuine admiration and respect. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Why take this risk on someone you just met?" "Because yesterday, you helped a stranger in the rain without asking for anything in return," she replied. "Because your daughter makes paper cranes for hope and believes in wishes coming true. Because in 15 minutes, you solved a problem that stumped a team of engineers for 3 days." She paused, looking around the cluttered garage. "And because sometimes the most qualified person isn't the one with the most impressive resume, it's the one who remembers that machines, like people, just need someone to really listen to them." Daniel nodded slowly, understanding that this moment represented more than just a job opportunity. It was a chance to rebuild not just his career, but his sense of purpose and dignity. It was Emily's paper crane wish beginning to unfold into reality. As they prepared to leave, Daniel looked back at the small garage where he had struggled to make ends meet for so many months. Tomorrow he would begin a new chapter, but he would never forget the lessons this place had taught him about persistence, humility, and the value of honest work. The prototype hummed quietly in the background, a testament to the power of listening carefully and acting with confidence, skills that couldn't be taught in any classroom, but were invaluable in the real world. Daniel's first week at the automotive development facility exceeded everyone's expectations, including his own. The modern research center was a stark contrast to the cluttered garage where he had been working. Everything was clean, organized, and equipped with the latest technology. But Daniel quickly proved that the most important tools were still the ones he carried with him: his experience, intuition, and unwavering attention to detail. Emily became a regular visitor to the facility during after-school hours. While other children might have been bored by the technical environment, she found endless fascination in the prototype vehicles and testing equipment. She began decorating the main workshop with her paper cranes, each one carefully folded and placed with intention. The engineering team, initially skeptical of Daniel's unconventional methods, gradually began to appreciate his unique approach to problem-solving. Where they saw complex diagnostic data, Daniel heard the subtle language of mechanical stress and electrical interference. He could identify developing issues days before they showed up on computer screens, preventing costly delays and equipment damage. One particularly memorable morning, a senior engineer named Marcus approached Daniel with frustration written across his face. "The new battery cooling system keeps triggering false alarms," Marcus explained, pointing to rows of error codes on his monitor. "The sensors are working perfectly. The software is bug-free, but something is making the system think it's overheating." Daniel listened carefully to Marcus's explanation, then asked to see the physical installation. They walked to the prototype bay, where the latest test vehicle sat connected to monitoring equipment. Instead of immediately looking at the diagnostic screens, Daniel opened the hood and simply listened. After a few minutes, he pointed to a small cooling fan near the battery pack. "That fan is running at the wrong frequency," he observed. "It's creating a harmonic vibration that's interfering with the temperature sensors." Marcus looked skeptical. "The fan specs are perfect. It's running exactly as designed." "The design is perfect for a laboratory environment," Daniel agreed. "But this is a real car that will be driven on real roads with real vibrations. The fan frequency is fine in isolation, but when combined with the engine mount vibrations, it creates resonance that confuses the sensors." To demonstrate his point, Daniel made a small adjustment to the fan's mounting position, shifting it just enough to change the vibration pattern. Immediately, the false alarm stopped and the cooling system operated smoothly. Marcus stared in amazement. "How did you know that?" "I've spent 20 years listening to machines complain," Daniel replied with a smile. "Once you learn their language, they tell you exactly what's wrong." Meanwhile, Cassandra found herself becoming more involved in the hands-on aspects of the development process. She had always been comfortable with financial reports and strategic planning, but Daniel's patient teaching helped her understand the physical reality behind the numbers. She learned to recognize the sound of a properly tuned electric motor, to feel the difference between smooth and rough acceleration, and to appreciate the elegant simplicity of well-designed mechanical systems. One afternoon, while Daniel was showing Cassandra how to properly check battery cell voltages, Emily appeared with her after-school snack and a new paper crane. This one was different from the others. Instead of bright origami paper, it was made from a page of technical specifications, carefully folded to preserve the important diagrams. "What does this one represent?" Cassandra asked, accepting the crane with genuine curiosity. Emily thought seriously about the question, as she always did. "It means that even boring work papers can become something beautiful if you fold them the right way," she replied. "And it means that Daddy's job is helping people build good things." The simple wisdom of Emily's observation struck both adults profoundly. Daniel realized that his work here wasn't just about fixing problems. It was about being part of something larger, something that would eventually help create cleaner, more efficient transportation for everyone. Cassandra understood that true innovation came not from expensive equipment or advanced degrees, but from the combination of technical knowledge and human insight. On the facility's rooftop, Daniel and Emily started a small garden using recycled materials from the workshop. They planted rosemary, basil, and mint in repurposed battery housing containers, creating a green space that smelled of herbs instead of motor oil. Cassandra often joined them during lunch breaks, learning about both gardening and the simple pleasure of working with her hands. During a crucial board meeting, the CFO raised concerns about Daniel's unconventional hiring. "He doesn't fit our corporate profile," the executive argued. "What happens when investors ask about our team's qualifications?" Cassandra was ready with data that spoke louder than any credential. She presented a comprehensive report showing that diagnostic accuracy had improved by 38% since Daniel joined the team, maintenance costs had decreased significantly, and problem resolution time had been cut in half. Most importantly, the team's morale had improved dramatically, with several engineers reporting increased job satisfaction and renewed enthusiasm for their work. The slide that generated the most discussion featured a photograph of one of Emily's paper cranes attached to a standard operating procedure, with her childish handwriting spelling out the word "listen." The image perfectly captured the cultural change that Daniel had brought to the facility, a reminder that the most sophisticated technology still required human intuition and careful attention. The board voted unanimously to not only retain Daniel, but to expand his role to include training other technicians in his diagnostic methods. His flexible schedule was formalized, allowing him to maintain his morning routine with Emily while contributing to the company's most important projects. That evening in Daniel's small apartment kitchen, Cassandra attempted to make grilled cheese sandwiches for dinner. The bread was slightly burned around the edges, but Daniel tasted it thoughtfully and smiled with his eyes. "Still good," he declared diplomatically. Emily appointed herself the official judge, holding up a hand-drawn scorecard showing 8 out of 10 in crayon numbers. "Not bad for a beginner," she pronounced with the serious authority of an 8-year-old food critic. As they sat around the small table sharing their imperfect but lovingly prepared meal, all three of them felt the warm satisfaction of a day well spent and a future full of possibilities. One Saturday morning, several weeks later, Cassandra found herself driving back to the small garage where she had first seen Daniel working. The building looked even more worn in the daylight, paint peeling from the walls, windows clouded with years of grime, and equipment that had seen better decades. She pushed open the door and stepped inside, breathing in the familiar scent of motor oil and metal. The red shop rag Daniel had used that first day still hung on a hook near the workbench, and the scarred wooden table where they had shared coffee was still marked with years of honest labor. Cassandra ran her fingers along the table's surface, remembering the conversation that had changed both their lives. She thought about the moment when Daniel had stepped out into the rain to help a stranger, asking for nothing more than a simple sandwich in return. That single act of kindness had created ripples that were still spreading outward, touching not just their lives but the lives of everyone they worked with. When she returned to the development facility, she found Daniel in the main workshop, patiently showing Emily how to check spark plugs on a small demonstration engine. The little girl wore safety glasses that were too big for her face, and she held the tools with the careful concentration of someone learning an important skill. "If you and Emily still need someone around," Cassandra said quietly, approaching them with a mixture of nervousness and hope, "I'd like to stay. Not just for the project, but really stay. Be part of whatever this is we're building together." Daniel looked at Emily, whose face lit up with joy. She had grown comfortable with Cassandra's presence over the past weeks, sharing her paper cranes and homework struggles, asking questions about Cassandra's work, and listening to stories about the business world with genuine interest. Emily nodded enthusiastically, then surprised them both by hugging Cassandra tightly. "She can stay, Daddy. She makes good pancakes now, and she knows how to fold cranes almost as good as us." Daniel felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying. The fear of being alone, of raising Emily without someone to share the joys and challenges, had been his constant companion for so long that its absence felt like breathing fresh air after being underwater. "Welcome home," he said simply. but the words carried the weight of genuine invitation and acceptance. Their first official family lunch together was beautifully imperfect. They sat at the facility's break room table, sharing chicken sandwiches that Cassandra had learned to make properly. No burned edges, just the right amount of mayonnaise, and cut diagonally the way Emily preferred. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the large windows, casting warm rectangles across the floor and illuminating Emily's newest paper crane as it hung from the ceiling light fixture. This one was made from gold origami paper and moved gently in the air conditioning current, casting tiny dancing shadows on the walls. The scent of rosemary drifted in from their rooftop garden, mixing with the industrial smells of the workshop to create something entirely new. The aroma of a place where different worlds had come together to create something better than either could achieve alone. As they ate and talked about their plans for the weekend, maybe a trip to the science museum or working together in the garden, Cassandra realized that she had found something she hadn't even known she was looking for. Not just love or companionship, but purpose and belonging. The satisfaction of being part of a family that chose each other daily. Family, she understood now, wasn't about where you came from or even about blood relations. It was about finding the people who saw your worth when you couldn't see it yourself, who saved you seats at their table, who shared their hopes and dreams in paper cranes. It was about choosing to stay, even when things got complicated, even when the future was uncertain. Sometimes the most important journeys begin with the smallest acts of kindness, like stopping to help a stranger in the rain, or asking for nothing more than a simple sandwich in return. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that sandwich becomes the first meal of a lifetime shared together. If you believe that a simple sandwich can change someone's destiny, leave a comment below sharing your own story of unexpected kindness. And don't forget to subscribe to Hidden Heart Stories so you never miss the moments that touch the heart.